Yeah, I believe this is approximately where we had left off with last time. And here we see a design for early mammals, and that goes back to we referred to before the dinosaurs. And the Dimetrodon was one animal we discussed, and then the Gorgonopsid is another. In both of these cases, what we see with these animals is with them being early tetrapods, would be another characteristics beside synapsid and a thorapsid. Their legs are going to be coming closer to directly underneath them, which is a mammalian characteristic. But especially with this one, like we had discussed, the Gorgonopsid had these powerful jaws with multiple teeth, and that's very evident in many of the large carnivores that we refer to today. Anything from the bear family to the cat family would have characteristics very much in common to what we see here with the Gorgonopsid. Okay, so remember, a monotreme, that is one of your orders. That's an egg-laying mammal, and we've seen one, the spiny anteater, or the echidna, was one of those animals, and the duck-billed platypus is the other. And remember, with those, they have a possible characteristic of waterproof fur, and that would be, again, your duck-billed platypus. Not so much your spiny anteater, but what those two animals do have in common, again, is that they are the ones that lay eggs. Okay. Other types of reproduction, like what we see here, viviviparous, that's referring to your koala bears, your other examples are opossums and also kangaroos. Remember, those types of mammals, they're born alive, but they're premature, that then develop within, you can see, born as immature and then develop mother's pouch. And then finally, the placentals. Those are probably the ones you're most common with, that being the swine family, the bovine family, those that you see developing on the farm, the different types of gestation periods, like for cattle, it's somewhere around 9 months, I believe, very similar to that of humans, and it's about 4 months for that of pigs then. And these animals, the young then develop the female's uterus, and they're attached by an umbilical cord. And inside, as you can see, the placenta. And in that placenta, there's amniotic fluid that then also nourishes the young then as well. So we have ovoviviparous, your duck-billed platypus, your viviviparous, which is your opossums and kangaroos and koala bears, then your placentals, that being your mammals that you're more familiar with again on the farm. And all animals are warm-blooded, okay? So they have a very high metabolism, as you can see. The energy is then metabolized from the food that they eat, and even in humans' brains, it's constantly moderates or monitors that body temperature. Because what happens is, if our core body temperature gets too warm, proteins begin to break down. And if they get too cold, then that can send your vital organs, especially your heart, into shock then, okay? And because of this concept, endothermy, being endothermic or warm-blooded, that allows these animals to live in a wide variety of environments. Because having hair and a high metabolism, they can create that energy that is vitally needed to, again, have all of those life functions take place. Okay, and those, as we can see, those two characteristics need lots of oxygen and nutrients to maintain that constant body temperature. And as we all know, we get too warm, your blood vessels will dilate to allow more blood to come from your core to the surface of your skin, so that heat can then be radiated out to the atmosphere. Another characteristic is if you're cold, then of course you would start to a shiver is a very common example for that, or we just don't have as much blood go to the surface, so it's lost to the atmosphere. And this is very evident, of course. The temperature of the mammals off above its environment, which would make sense, especially for those animals found in the Arctic, and of course us rough South Dakotans, if you consider us mammals, of course, having our body temperature, even on a nice day like today, it's would be very rare, or doesn't happen very often, where the temperature is actually warmer outside than it is inside the body. And again, we can adapt to those different environments just because of this characteristic. We can sweat, okay, to cool our bodies, or we can actually have blood stay closer towards the core of our body, so we're not radiating as much to the outside. Okay, that leaves us with, I see, one, two, and we'll get to those at a later time. As we can see, that was posted on Plan Book. We'll discuss orders of mammals here shortly. Vocab, as we discussed last week, was going to be due on the 24th, which is tomorrow, and we have Vocab Quiz 1, which, as we all know, would probably entail 15 questions. Look over the first 17 terms, and then it could be any one of those 15. That is tomorrow. We will finish the orders then on Thursday, and also finish this chapter on Friday. Then after the week, we'll move on to getting into close to the first week of May. We'll move on to what I want to say, the different body systems, the skeletal and muscular system. But let's get the characteristics of the mammals out of the way first. Okay, so that does it for what we would be doing in this chapter, mammals. Now we will move on to so we left off with that of the primates. There are many examples that you could give for that of primates, orangutan, or spider monkey, a gibbon. Okay, any of the apes would certainly work. And what we see here, a very complex diet, because they're omnivores, problem solvers. That's why I consider having a very large cortex. So being able to work different types of problems out, to analyze many different types of situation. And binocular vision, okay, forward-facing eyes. That's a characteristic for many active predators, which is going to be no different for that of the apes and the chimps as well. And the idea of having these forward-facing eyes or binocular vision is so that you have a definite depth perception. You're not going to quite have the wide field of vision to judge distances, which living in the treetops would certainly be an advantage. You know, jump when you are 50 to 75, maybe 100 feet up in the air. Being able to judge that distance accurately is certainly going to be an advantage, and that's why this order of mammals. Okay, move on to what we see some of the plant eaters, which is no surprise with that of rabbits and hares. Maybe it's just a misconception of feeding on taproots, which would be that of your carrots, but nonetheless is one of the parts of their diet, since they are herbivores. As you can see, these you would think are very more like rodents, but because of this characteristic right here, a double row of upper incisors, I suppose you could almost classify beavers into this category as well, but they're more so associated with that of rodents. And very prolific. That's also a characteristic of the rodents. So these mammals would be very closely related. Any one of those from rats, mice, rabbits, very prolific, which means they have a very quick reproductive rate as opposed to maybe that of cattle, where we said it's about 9 months. You look at these animals, you're looking at possibly 2 months, possibly, is their gestation period. So reproduce very, very quickly. And that was very evident in that video dealing with that of the mammals, especially over in India, where it's the belief that people are reincarnated as rats and come back in that type of population, and with no predators there, no reason to kill them because they're protected by religious aspects. Going by unchecked, these animals reproduce very, very fast. So you can certainly see that in that video. Then with rats crawling on top of people, that would not be for myself. Okay. Rabbits, Lagomophora, and notice what we've gone through so far. Your monotremes, your duck-billed platypus, then your marsupials, your koala bears, and kangaroos. Then I think we moved on to Xanthara, which would be your ant eaters. And one of the reasons that we mention them is they have that very unique vertebrae. That is one of the characteristics I remember talking about. Okay, and allows them as a defense mechanism possibly roll up into a ball then. Okay, and insectivora, that's very evident right there, just in the name, of course, feeding on insects. And your flying mammals, your Chiropteras, we discussed the primates already. Then the rabbits are after the primates. Then we moved on to rodents. Remember, we had said that those two orders were possibly closely related. The rabbits and the mice and rats and gophers. So when we say most adaptable, that's certainly true. Of course, all mammals are, but because of their small size and being able to reproduce and adapt to many different types of diets, and again with their size, as you can see, the most prolific of all mammals, to where these populations then can certainly, as you can see, explode. And especially, we just talked about that on the last slide with that of the rats. Okay, now let's go ahead and go to the aquatic side. And here we have the cetaceans, those whales and dolphins, as you can see. With this, a unique characteristic for these animals is this idea of echolocation. Okay, now with the ways that these animals have adapted using this echolocation is when the sound, if you want to say sound waves, bounce off of the object and come back towards the animal, the teeth of these are offset just a little bit. Notice when you look in the mirror and looking at your bright pearly teeth, hope so anyway, the idea that they're perfectly balanced. Your incisors are symmetrical to that of your nose, so they're balanced on the left and the right. That would not be the case for these animals. That would not be centered like it is in that of a human's jaw. And the reason for that is when those sound waves come back, when it reflects off their teeth, that gives these animals an idea of where that prey item would possibly be located, whether it's left or right. And then another way they work for being up or down from them, but that's neither here nor there, so we will not discuss that aspect. But just a unique adaptation that these animals have in using this echolocation. Okay, no surprise here, and we know that these are not fish, for one. Of course, all mammals breathe air through lungs as opposed to gills, and it's also the tail action. Of course, that of a shark or a fish, the tail moving left to right as opposed to up and down with that of the whales in the water. Okay, and with this, after breathing in some air, it's just blown out the top. Okay, with that of blowholes, and that's where a lot of the hair would be located. Because remember, that's a characteristic of all mammals, is that they have hair, and that's where you would find the majority of their hairs inside their blowholes. And with these modified limbs as flippers, okay, when we think of limbs, we would picture quadrupedal animal, in other words, arms, legs, or having 4 legs, where these limbs are modified to help them move through the water. These flippers or fins, if you want to call it that, actually create lift to make that animal perhaps more lighter in water. It makes them more efficient, because the faster the animal, then the more fish you're going to catch. The more fish you're going to catch, the more successful you'll be to not go hungry and then pass those traits on to the next generation. That will not be the only aquatic one. We'll move a little further ahead to that of the order Pianopedia. Those are your aquatic carnivores. Not that these are also carnivores as well, but this is what puts them into a separate order than that of, for instance, the sea lions. Okay. We also have sea herbivores. Those would be your manatees. We'll get to them at a later time, and of course that would be what you would see right here. Okay, your manatee. That's probably the last one, Sirenia. Yep. So after today, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll begin with the carnivora, probably the most common of all mammals, other than that people are familiar with. Order carnivora then tomorrow. So we will catch up to you next time.